Thank you so much for being here with us. And we will now begin with the next panel. I am so sorry to switch to English now to introduce our moderator.
This next panel discussion will be dedicated to, as I mentioned previously before the break, to the strong bond existing in between those architects and craftspersons who have been collaborating in different projects throughout their careers. And this session will be moderated by Marjorie, who is a folklorist and curator of the Center for Folklore and Cultural Heritage of the Smithsonian Institution. And she's also the director of a new initiative they are now implementing, which is the Building Arts and Traditional Architecture program. Thank you very much, Marjorie.
Thank you, Alejandro, and sincere thanks to the entire organizing team of the conference. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our audience online. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm honored to be moderating this panel discussion on architecture and traditional building crafts with two distinguished architects and two extraordinary master craftsmen. So it is my great pleasure now to introduce our panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Melissa DelVecchio. Melissa is a partner at Robert A.M. Stern Architects based in New York City and a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. She served as the design lead for the award-winning 2 new residential colleges at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut, the Benjamin Franklin College and the Pauli Murray College. The architectural details and artisanal elements of these colleges, specifically the beautiful metal entryway gates, will be one of the focal points of our conversation today. Melissa is a member of the Richard H. Driehaus Prize and Rafael Manzano Prize juries. Welcome, Melissa. Zoltan Kovacs is a Hungarian-trained metallurgist and master metalworker who is the principal partner of Kovacs Design in Clifton, New Jersey, an atelier that specializes in ornamental and architectural metal design and fabrication. Zoltan and his team of highly skilled blacksmiths at Kovacs Design work closely with Melissa DelVecchio and her team to design and craft the exquisite ornamental ironwork entry gates for the 2 new colleges at Yale. 9 metal gates in total. The 4 magnificent primary entryway gates were all hand-forged and handcrafted by Zoltan and his team of talented craftsmen. José María Rincón is a highly regarded architect in Spain who specializes in architectural restoration. He worked as a civil servant, as a public works and urban design architect for diverse local and regional administrations from 1978 until his recent retirement in 2018. José María has supervised the restoration of many important cultural heritage monuments in Spain, including the restoration of the Roman arch of Mdina Feli, which dates from the 2nd century AD, and the entrance to the very old and important monastery of Santa María de Huerta. In this capacity, he collaborated with our final panelist, Rodrigo de la Torre. And Rodrigo, welcome, Rodrigo. Rodrigo is a master stonemason and sculptor who has specialized in conservation and restoration of historic monuments since 1985. His roots in the trade go back many generations in his family. During his more than 30-year professional career in the craft, Rodrigo has worked to restore numerous historic structures in Spain, including more than 10 cathedrals. As an advisor on monumental restoration projects, he has conducted preliminary studies for countless restoration as well restorations, as well as cultural outreach programs on historic heritage. So Rodrigo is a member of the National Network of Traditional Building Masters, and he is the winner of the 2020 Richard H. Driehaus Building Arts Award in the brickwork and stonework category. So congratulations, Rodrigo, on this great honor. Rodrigo worked closely together with José, María, Rincón on the restoration of the Roman Arch of Mdina Feli and also the Monastery of Santa María de Huerta. So to begin our conversation, you know, what we have represented here with our four panelists, I think is something very exciting, very important, and that is the close collaborative working relationship between architects and craftsmen on major architectural projects. In the case of Melissa and Zoltan, it was the design and production of elements for a new traditional building. For Jose Maria and Rodrigo, it's the careful restoration of precious ancient monuments in Spain. But what both teams share in common, and what I've really been struck by, is a deep mutual respect and admiration for each other, for the knowledge and abilities that each person, both designer and artisan, brings to the success of the project. So Melissa, I thought I would start with you and ask if you could briefly describe your work on the two new colleges at Yale, particularly as it relates to your close collaboration with Zoltan on the design and execution of the beautiful metalwork entryway gates.
Sure. Thanks, Marjorie. Yes, this was a project that we worked on for a very long time. We started it in 2008, and I think the buildings finally opened in 2017. It was actually somewhat delayed by the 2008 recession. So it was a long-term process where we built relationships with really many artisans across the time that we were working. And the one that we wanted to highlight here is our work with Zoltan on the metal gates. And it was really critical for us to collaborate with him. Architects can bring their own design sensibility to something, but when you're working with something as complicated as hand-wrought metal, you really need to understand the material and the strength that it takes and the connection points. And we were really able to work most effectively by collaborating closely with Zoltan. So Zoltan came on board to work with us starting in the design development stage, so like 2011 or so. And we worked straight through with him until the gates were installed in 2017, starting from our earliest design sketches. And then he really would take those and scrutinize them and make sure that we were taking advantage of the quality of the materials and that we were doing things efficiently and that we were maximizing the beauty of the material and the beauty of the connections in our work.
I'll just, yes, thank you, Melissa. Oh dear, this is there. Thank you, Melissa. And yeah, you've written very beautifully about the benefits of the involved artisan for the project. And I just, before turning to Zoltan, you had mentioned that that you and members of your design team actually went to Zoltan's workshop and tried your hand at forming metal, and just I was wondering if you could describe that experience for us.
Zoltan was very smart. He made sure that we really all understood how difficult it was to do this kind of work. And he did that by actually inviting our whole team. So this was a pretty large team at various points in the project. So maybe 20 of us went to his workshop, and we got a demonstration of how they work the metal, how they make their own tools, how they were setting themselves up with full-size drawings to work from, to to implement their work on the gates. But he also had us try our hand at it ourselves. And I think there was maybe one person on our team, this younger woman, who actually was reasonably good at getting the metal to a point, but none of the rest of us could do anything with it. And so it gave us an extra special level of respect for the work and the strength that it takes to do this work.
Thank you. And Zoltan, I wanted to turn to you and ask you if you could speak to your collaborative relationship with Melissa and her team of designers at Robert A.M. Stern. What was it like working together? What do you think you and your team were able to contribute to the project? And
thank you, Marjorie. We had a very fun time and a very easy work collaborating and working with Ramza team together. They already knew the material. They already knew the design elements which will be connected together. So they have a very deep knowledge about metalworks. What we have to just focus on is to translate the design into the metal. And we started to work on ironing sketches in iron, and they were able to visit our workshop very often, look at the process and progress, learn about and tell us details what we have to emphasize and change, modify, add or remove from the gates. So it was really a teamwork, and we really enjoyed to work with them because they were very open for suggestions. We were able to produce many different sketches, and they understood the details right away because they had the deep knowledge about metalworks.
Actually, if I could just add one thing, the design evolves quite a bit over the course of the process, through the drawing process, but also once Zoltan and his team got into the workshop. And towards the end of the production process, we would show up and they would be proposing a new kind of cover for the lock or something that had a special detail on it that we hadn't come up with together. So it was an ongoing process of discovery and adding richness to the design that was really great fun for all of us.
yes, that's wonderful. I think what they can bring through their understanding of the materials and the processes to enrich the project. Thank you both so much. And now I wanted to turn to Jose Maria with the same question. If you could speak briefly about either the restoration of the Roman Arch or the monastery of Santa Maria de Huerta and your collaboration with Rodrigo. And why did you feel it was important to involve Rodrigo in such an integral way in the project?
Bien.
Well, the Mdina Feli Ark, as you can see in the book, it was a work that we started thinking of in the year 2000, but we could not start working in until 2003 because we saw that there were some cracks in the stone, but until we didn't have a report that really showed that the stone had certain pathologies that are the ones that are described all along the study, that it was a very old stone, that it had cracked, and that there were many lacks of stone within it and had been filled with brick. So we understood that it needed to be a mason, it needed to be a stone master. That decision could not be taken by me. We had to make the decision together with Central Services, but we knew that Rodrigo was the perfect person for it. And I was really happy when he was chosen because I had started working with him in Valgallón in a different work, and that's how we started collaborating. If And as for Santa María de Huerta, it's a different project. It took place later on, and it was an entrance that was also old stone, but in a different way, because it was a 17th century stone. It did not come from the 2nd century. So what it had was problems, especially due to humidity, especially at the base, and we had to replace some of the stonework, and it was the main entrance to the monastery. So we had to do it by reproducing all of the molding, all of the shapes, because there were some aspects remaining. So we had to respect them. So we that's what we have done together that we are talking about here today. But we have worked together in other projects as well.
Thank you, Jose, Maria, and. Oops, I've got the echo. Here we go. Thank you. And yes, Rodrigo, perhaps could you elaborate for us on this collaboration, what you were able to bring to the project, being someone who has spent your life specializing in stonemasonry, particularly in restoration and conservation. What were the particular sort of knowledge and expertise that you were able to bring to these two restoration projects? Yes, I'm particularly interested in the particular knowledge, perhaps of techniques and stone, the particular stone being used that you could offer.
Hello. I'm sorry. I have to deactivate the translation, otherwise I hear myself. Okay, so in general, I'd say that when we deal with restoration and conservation of monuments, technicians and craftsmen need to be completely engaged, because always, I'd say that 100% of cases, it's singular projects. It's projects where no matter how well the project has been designed, there will be surprises, because it's never a standard construction. They all have a series of specificities. So in that sense, collaboration between the architect and the craftsman always needs to be seamless and an intense collaboration, because it's what the situation requires. It's necessary. So what can I bring to the project? Well, the architect usually has a general idea of the project and he has some criteria, but very often they don't know how to land them, you could say. And in the case of stonework, sometimes they don't even know if it's feasible in stone, because although they might know in detail what the processes are, obviously their training is a larger training, not as specific as that of the craftsman. The craftsman is very much focused on his materials and his craft, and they have an in-depth knowledge, but they don't have the larger vision that an architect could have. So I would say that that's really the difference. So I would like to highlight here, quite briefly, that the person who has actually taught me how to work with the stone is the monuments themselves, because I've always learned from what my ancestors did. And I can consider that my ancestors are my masters, and that's what I can offer. What I learned from looking at how things were built and that we needed to redo so that we could keep on preserving the monument. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I too have to turn off the translation. Thank you so much, Rodrigo. And that's such a critical point of learning from the work itself and from the hand of the original craftspeople who built it and the monument. So important. I wanted to turn to another question. I've heard both Zoltan and Rodrigo speak very eloquently about the importance of using and preserving the traditional techniques of their crafts that have been handed down for generation to generation. The importance of the handcrafted work, the human touch of the craftsman's hand. And I wanted to ask each of you why this is important to you, why you think this matters to the architectural project. So Zoltan, I guess turning to you first, if you could share your thoughts about what you think traditional techniques and traditional craftsmanship bring to the architectural project, and why you think it is important, why it matters, why you think it's important to preserve and to continue to use these traditional ways of working.
Rodrigo worded so well before that we have to learn from our masters. And as blacksmiths or metal workers, we are turning into the past as well. And learning from the craftsmanship, how they built the gate, how they forged metal. And all of the metal workers has their own style. All the traditional works has their own soul, and all the workers who worked, for instance, at the Yale gates at Jalin's workshop has the old strokes, and this gives a character for a traditionally made metal work, or probably we can talk about stone as well. And we have to meet with the client, and we have to meet with the architects as well, who keen to have these details, to have these unique works to be installed and fabricated and manufactured. It's not easy these days because of budget, because of finding such a project. But if we find and we are able to collaborate such works, and be entrusted with those kind of works, and the architects understands the difference between the modern technology and the handmade details, then we have a great success.
Yes, yes, thank you. And I mean, Melissa, I'm curious about you, and then also Jose Maria, I'll turn to you, but you know, what you as architects think about having hand craftsmanship as part of your projects, and if it makes a difference. So Melissa, I know you went the route of incorporating this exquisite handcrafted artisanal elements into the new colleges at Yale, not just in metalwork, but in stone and in stained glass. But say, you know, turning to Zoltan and his team's work, there are 4 absolutely fabulous, highly ornate, hand-forged, handcrafted entryway gates there. And I'm wondering, you know, what your design goals were, how, you know, what were you trying to achieve with this, why that was important to you, to be able to have this hand craftsmanship be part of this project that you were working for so long and so hard on.
Great. So these 2 new buildings were the first new colleges that Yale had built. Most of them were built in the 1930s, and then there were 2 built in the 1960s by Eero Saarinen, and the university had chosen a site where it was really critical that we kind of extend that traditional language of the central Yale campus in order to kind of knit together these 2 ends of the campus. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it, but it's an important point, because what it meant was that Yale was very focused on making sure that these 2 new colleges had a sense of parity with the older buildings. And that went from everything from the way the student accommodations worked to the detailing of the building. And so we were lucky enough to have a client who understood that this thing that the students were going to touch, I mean, 900 students live in these buildings and they go in and out of these gates multiple times a day. So it's about the kind of quality that you can really see and feel and touch, and really showing off that the artisans who can do this work really do still exist. So we started with a lot of research into Samuel Yellin, as Zoltan notes, who did most of the original gates at Yale, research into his techniques and designs, and the sort of handcrafted quality of the work, but also look towards some other, famous metal workers, and to Zoltan and his team to add to that. And it was everything that was really based on that research. We were lucky enough to have on our team a fellow named Chris McIntyre, who actually had worked with a Yale professor named Kent Bloomer, who's an expert in ornament. And so Chris was able to kind of take these ideas that we were generating as a team, take them to that first level of stylized drawing that then he and Zoltan could work together with on the project. But it really speaks to the collaboration that's required to get a project like this built. I mean, this building was touched by hundreds, literally hundreds of people, probably 100 in our office alone over the 9 years that we worked on the project, not to mention the engineers and other artisans. And it's a real opportunity. Even one of the bricklayers actually delayed retirement so that he could have an opportunity to work on such a richly detailed project and pass on that craft to the fellows that he worked with, because those opportunities don't come up that frequently. So it was something that really everybody from the campus to the architects to the contractors really cared deeply about.
Such a critical point, really, and the importance of having that training ground. And it's just a model project in every way. And Rodrigo, you have spoken so passionately and eloquently too about your thoughts on the importance of hand craftsmanship on every project. And to quote you, the importance of the hands and the brain of the craftsman versus the machine. And I just was hoping that you could elaborate on your feelings about the importance of hand craftsmanship in the projects that you work on.
Well, actually, I think that it's others who need to give importance to this. Zoltan, I'm sure, will understand what I'm about to say. Those of us who work our craft are linked to the craft and the materials, and it's a very personal, intimate relationship. So our raison d'etre is not something that needs to be asked to us, but to others. It's society that needs to decide whether they want us to keep on existing and working. And for that to happen, we need to have a market, because unfortunately, we cannot be frozen and then gotten out of the freezer when they need some doors in EL to be manufactured, and then freezers again for the next project. We need to be in the market. We need to keep on learning. We need to keep on teaching. And younger generations need to learn, and we need to teach. So from my point of view, it's a real need. We need for the society to be involved. Does society require for these crafts to go on? And if it were up to me, I would say yes. But obviously, I think it's others who need to answer to that question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And of course, Jose Maria, I'm sure you have thoughts on this yourself that we would love to hear from you.
Well, if monuments need to be preserved, we need artisans, we need building masters, and these monuments were not built by any machine, but by the hands of men. So conservation needs to be done using similar methods. Otherwise, we would just be building something that is false, that is phony. It's a matter of preserving, not replacing, in as far as possible. In the case of Rodrigo, we saw how he was just concerned with removing the ashlars and replace them with an equivalent volume of stone, which had the same qualities as the original stone. However, I must say that in the case of Santa María de Huerta, which is much more recent, all of the old constructions have some pieces, some parts that could be built using a machine. But it's very unfeasible because the placement and the adjustment does not really meet the requirements of the old constructions.
Thank you very much, Jose Maria. And it looks like we're coming close to the end of our time. We need to begin questions soon. I thought maybe we could end our discussion. I would like to ask each of you in turn what you value most about your work, or perhaps what you enjoy most about your work. If you could reflect on that and express for us, yes, I guess what it is you value and enjoy most about the work that you do, what gives you the greatest satisfaction. And maybe starting with Zoltan and Rodrigo and going to Melissa and Jose. Zoltan, are you
Thank you.
ready to take it away?
Thank you, Marjorie. First of all, when we create something by hand, we leave our mark for future generation. And when you create something by hand, you try to create something which is long-lasting, at least 300, 400, or 500 years, and not only for tomorrow world. And when you create something for a long time period, you focus on details, you focus on every square inch of the stone or the metal work. And all of these details make us happy. Erecting those gates, for instance, knowing that people are going to touch them every day, passing through these gates, gives us a pride in our work. And this is the pride what I'm trying to tell all the young blacksmiths, that take pride of their work, put their touch mark on it, sign the work what they created, because that's going to be there for a long time.
Thank you so much. And for you, Rodrigo. What do you value most?
Well, I'm going to repeat something that a Belgian researcher, René Sancer, told me when I was young. He said the best stone is built in the underground. It can lay there for millions of years, but the man digs a hole, takes out the stone, and it exposes it to the weather, to human action. So somehow it dooms the stone to its death. Since we use stones like this, we must strive to give it a purpose, a utility, a function. And that is one of the musts of our profession.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Okay, thank you.
Questions and answers.
Yes, and turning to Melissa quickly, and then Jose.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. It's going to sound like I made up this answer just for this panel discussion, but I swear that I didn't. The thing that I enjoy most really is the collaboration that it takes to make these buildings come to fruition. And, you know, everything from the people inside of my office to the engineers that we work with, to the artisans that we work with. I really do think that the architect is like a conductor of a wonderful orchestra. And it's when you learn to ask really good questions and you learn to let people take their own place in the project, the place that will give them pride in their own work, that I find most important. And I think Zoltan and I share that. He says he can see the mark of the individual blacksmiths in his shop on those gates, and I can see the mark of the many individual folks on my team who worked on various parts of the colleges. And you know, that's a real source of pride for me, is that I was able to work with such a talented team to bring this all together.
Lovely. And Jose Maria?
Sí,
Well, in my case, I fully agree with what Melissa has just said. I value the exchange of information, the exchange of knowledge and experiences. This really is something that you bring with you for your next project. You have not only gained knowledge, but you have better knowledge to tell the artisans what to do and what not to do. And that's all for the time being. That's all from me.
Oh,
Thank you. Thanks to
you have some questions for the that have come in for the panel?
Thanks to you all, and sorry for interrupting this very interesting conversation. And that it could go on and on forever because there are so many interesting aspects of these collaborations. And we have also very interesting questions from the public. First one is very to the point, and it's Juan de Dios is asking how do you collaborate to get to include in the early stages of the project within your budgets? How do you collaborate to get the prices, to budget these prices for such unique and crafted works?
Sounds like it.
Melissa?
A question for me, and I'm happy to talk about that because I think the collaboration was part of what made that possible. Zoltan did not just get the work, he had to compete for the work. But we knew at the same time that if we did not bring in an artisan early on in the phase, we might draw things that were inefficient or difficult, unintentionally extra difficult for a metal worker to do. And so we thought it was really important, and Yale agreed to bring on Zoltan early in the process so we could work with him closely and work to a budget. And then Zoltan, of course, had to compete for the work and bid on the work against others, and we were lucky that he was chosen in the end. But it was part of working with Zoltan that allowed us to plan for that budget and to plan across these 9 gates which ones were the most frequently used and should have the most elegant and complicated detail to them, and which ones could rely on the beauty of the handworked material but have much simpler details to help meet that budget. And we couldn't have done that without the collaboration together.
Thank you very much. We have more questions here. Well, all the public, you can continue sending questions through the chat, which is available below the screen. Here there's another from Enrique de la Peña, and he says, common people is usually surprised when looking at traditional architecture and seeing so much richness in their interior and exterior ornament. Don't you think that traditional architecture, if being widely known, would have a much better interaction with the public than the usually very commonly very let's translate it as he says arid image of the most of the modernly built buildings.
Who would like to field that question?
If no one else wants to, I guess I will. The one thing I could say is, of course I agree, but it was very interesting for us. The photo shoot for those colleges was actually the week that the students were moving in. And so while I was there for the photo shoot, I got to see some of the initial reactions of the students as they entered the courtyard and were showing their friends where they were going to live. And it was so interesting to me how they immediately picked up on the meaning of the details that we had put into it, how they immediately picked up on the relationship of our buildings to some of the historic buildings on campus and would remark to one another, oh, it's kind of like this, but it's actually really different and new. And it was satisfying, but also it kind of surprised me how quickly they picked up on those things and how they really read every cue that we left for them. And we're super interested in what all the ornament meant and these little mysteries that were left for them. So people do appreciate it. And I think, I don't know how we can expand that more, but it does seem like something that is very legible to everyone and that they can all appreciate.
Yes, I would like to just weigh in. I was very impressed with all of the research that you did into Samuel Yellen, this, for those of you who don't know him, just legendary master metalworker who did most of the original work at Yale, and deep research into his style and his work and his methods of craftsmanship, research into the original buildings and the detailing there. And so that it just, this huge effort in terms of research that went into being able to understand how you could have that wonderful melding or coming together of these new buildings with the old, so you could have harmony, and not dissimilar to the research that that Rodrigo and Jose Maria do with the old buildings that they research and understand so deeply. I didn't have translate on there, but I hope that came across, Alejandro, to Rodrigo and Jose Maria. Are there other questions?
See, we have another question, which is about Yale. It's from Christopher Rand. He's asking what role played the existing gates in the design of the new gates, the gates from the previous colleges in the design of the new ones?
I think this question is more likely to me. I think it was a huge role studying all the existing gates. And if you walk around campus and look at all the colleges' gates, they are really the sign of the college. All the students who's passing by these gates, touching them every day. So it has to be very personal. The design of these gates are different, but somehow speaking the same language. And learning about each gate, how it was how they were forged, how they were made, what material they used. You can recognize that Jenny's workshop had many talented artists and blacksmiths, and it's not just bears the master's hand, but also the apprentice's hand. And you can see details, but not only those who study deeply these gates, but also who interested about details or metalwork can discover. And those are kind of hidden messages from the masters. So it was a very important very important task to study those gates. We wanted to do something similar what Yellen and his team did for Yale University, but we didn't want to copy their work. We want to create something different, but as I said, speaking the same language. And we got a very strong guidance from the architects team, very strong help supporting us in design and being open for suggestions. And it was very important for us also not to use machinery, but making every test by hand, doing the mortise joints by hand, punching through the metal by hand, not using machinery, because it gives certain character for every joinery, certain character for the entire work. And if it is not a copy, but you can see it's authentic and handmade. So it was very important to study those gates.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zoltan. We have a last question this is addressed to Rodrigo. Is which work was the most satisfactory in your career and your experience, and why it was?
Pues yo creo.
Well, I think I haven't started that one yet. It's yet to be done. Well, all of my works have taught me something. I think learning is an endless path. You never reach the finish line. You're always learning. Of course, I feel satisfied about some of my works, not so much so about others, but I've never thought, well, this is my favorite work, this is my best one. I'm still waiting for it. Okay, let's rephrase the question. What is the work you've learned from the most, and why? Well, that takes some thinking. From a point of view of my trade, I would say the preliminary studies before the restoration of the Pórtico de la Gloria in the Santiago Cathedral, because this is really a unique building that I really researched with a great level of detail. I got to know the medieval stonework and sculptural techniques. Professionally speaking, the restoration of the facade of the Cathedral of Girona, a Baroque cathedral, which was originally made with a very complicated type of stone, a fossil type of sandstone, and which required the replacement of very large pieces. And this really entailed a lot of hard work, a very large team of people, and this was quite a challenge. So I would just mention those two in answer to your question. Okay, thank you, Rodrigo. Well, we do have a final question for José María. How can the administration try to bring artisans on board the works? What can the administration do to promote such a collaboration? Well, I always distinguish between new constructions and traditional projects, restoration of all monuments, which is what I do. So, in answer to your question, I think that the new generations need to continue to learn and acquire the necessary skills, because not all works in all monuments are simple. Some of them are very complicated, and this complication can only be tackled from the point of view of artisans, construction masters, because they are the ones that have to deal with the materials and they know what the obstacles are.
Una última pregunta.
Thank you, José María. A final question, and any of you can answer it. How do you incorporate the rhythm of the work of craftsmen into modern architecture projects? Is it difficult to reach that balance when there are economic pressures behind? Well, maybe I can answer that question. Well, we just have to start with a diagnosis that incorporate the artisan involvement in any project before the project actually starts, because you cannot just start a project not knowing how are you going to handle different materials, or otherwise it's impossible to come up with the right budget. So diagnosis is required, and this also involves holding several meetings with different professionals, including craftsmen, and that helps you define the approach to the project and the budget. Okay, anyone else wants to answer that question? Well, normally the work of artisans involves a great amount of labor. And this has to do with, of course, the deadlines and budgets and whatnot. But we do what we can. We try to manage within those limitations.
It's very interesting to me, these questions. And sometimes people look at those buildings at Yale and they just think that there was an unlimited budget, and that's how we were able to do this. And that is never the case. You know, budgets may be higher or budgets may be lower, but there's always a budget, and you have to be strategic. And we did that by combining a lot of very modern prefabrication techniques with very traditional artisanal techniques in that building. And when Yale did a final analysis of the costs, they found that we were able to achieve that on a cost per square foot basis for the same kind of cost that Eero Saarinen did to concrete colleges out of in the 1960s. So, you know, those buildings weren't terribly inexpensive buildings either, but it does show you that it's not the level of detail that really contributes to the large portion of the budget in these projects. It's actually, they can be done for similar price to other types of architecture.
Thank you. Thanks to you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and so this has been just a fabulous panel, and I want to express my heartfelt thanks to our wonderful panelists, Melissa DelVecchio, Zoltan Kovacs, Rodrigo de la Torre, and Jose Maria Rincón. And I'd also just thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights with all of us. And I would like to say, if anyone would like to learn more about the projects and collaborations between these architects and craftsmen, I highly recommend, there's superb articles in the new Journal of Traditional Building Architecture and Urbanism that will be on the conference website soon. We first have an article by Melissa DelVecchio and Ariane Khoury entitled Research, Craft, and Production, the Entryway Gates at Benjamin Franklin and Pauli Murray Colleges at Yale University. And then we also have a great article by Rodrigo de la Torre and Jose Maria Rincón entitled Restoration of the Roman Arch of Mdina Feli Ark. And they're great articles, and you can learn more from this great new journal that's coming. And finally, I just would like to thank our wonderful audience for joining us. Thank you for your great questions and for listening and watching and being with us. Thank you. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much, Marjorie, and thanks to all the panelists for this great time together. Thanks also to all the public for the great questions. And as Marjorie was mentioning, these additional contents to the live program of the conference will be available through the magazine soon, but you already have them available also in recorded form. So you can watch their presentations, which are already uploaded to the conference website. So for those of you who keep having energy tonight, or it depends on the time of I know it's earlier in other parts of the world, but if you still have energy after all this long session, I recommend you to go to the conference website and watch these fantastic presentations by a number of wonderful practitioners, both architects, urban designers, researchers, and also traditional building masters, which are there for you to take a look at while we have this the live discussions during these 2 days. Also, I want to add that some more contents will be uploaded during next week. So this will be enriched during the next days, and I hope to keep most of the public also with us tomorrow. You are very welcome to continue with the contents we have scheduled for tomorrow. We will visit other parts of the world. We will also be looking at different building traditions, and I hope the entire picture of which will be provided through this live program gives also a glimpse, at least a glimpse of the enormous richness and variety of contributions we have received for this event. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you also to all the institutions that make this possible, and especially to Richard Driehaus, who is supporting all this work and is the one who is making all this happen. Thank you.